Welcome everybody to the third installment of Everett Community College's JOURNcomm Shoptalk series. Today we're lucky to have Mr. Brett Atwood joining us. Brett has been a communications and professional for more than 25 years, starting as a journalist in the entertainment sector, working for Billboard Magazine. He's also been a communications professional in the tech sector, working for companies like Real Networks and Amazon.com. And then he had transitioned into education, where he is currently the director of the Integrated Strategic Communications Program at WSU Everett. He also still works actively in the comm field as a senior marketing manager for Linden Lab, and joining us today. So welcome, Brett.
Thank you.
How did you get your start in the journalism and communications field?
Probably like a lot of students of yours, I just loved writing. I just felt a natural connection to journalism. I took a journalism class in my community college and worked my way up on the college newspaper to editor-in-chief, and I knew instantly that's what I wanted to do. And then I interned when I went to my four-year college at San Francisco State. I interned and worked at a music publication that turned into a part-time job, and then that eventually led to a full-time job, and so on and so forth. So that's how I sort of made my entree into it, but it was directly connected to my community college experience, actually.
Was there a specific moment or event that made you realize journalism was your thing?
Honestly, I just always have loved that sector. I've always loved to be informed about what's going on in the world. I started off in entertainment journalism, so music journalism specifically, and I, like a lot of people, love music, and that was where my passion was. And the fact that I could work and write and meet artists and go to the record events, I mean, you know, as a young person at the time, that was really exciting to me. And honestly, that's what made it for me, just sealing the deal. I remember the first time a couple of the artists that I really, really loved, I had in one day, as an intern, 2 artists that I got to interview for sort of Q&A profiles. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've arrived, this is awesome. And I was getting paid like nothing, but just the fact that I could meet like 2 of the artists that I really loved and write about them and have my name, the byline, which is so exciting to get a buzz from that, especially early, you know, in your career, was really, that's what did it for me.
Yeah. So did journalism come first and the entertainment second there, or was it the pole of entertainment journalism as a whole there?
Just, it was an entree into that world. And so, I mean, I've always loved writing. I mean, I'm a bit geeky in this way, and I don't know if I've ever shared this story, but like when I was a young person, I actually would sort of simulate, I would like write with paper magazines, and I would like, this is like before the internet era, so I would like take like, you know, 8.5 by 11 paper and fold it and staple it and actually like draw and create little mini magazines and things like that. So just as a young person, I always was into the idea of media content and creating.
I think many of us have those shared experiences. I published the Shooting Star, my newspaper, when I was 5 years old.
Oh my God, yeah,
that's
cool.
Pretty common one there. What's the your favorite story you did while you were with Billboard?
Oh my gosh, there's a lot. I'm probably the most interesting, well, there's a few different crazy ones. A lot of artist stories that I'll skip, actually, because some are kind of strange. But I had one where it was the first opportunity I had to do pretty much a cover story, and it was dealing with Asian piracy. So in Hong Kong, this again right before the internet era, there were CD-ROMs that people would burn illicit material on. So they'd pirate software and or pirate music CDs or pirate movies onto discs. And of course now you can get all that on the internet, legitimately or otherwise. But the fact that that was a trade that was very you know, active in that market was really interesting. And I had a family trip where I actually went, and I was so into the idea of working. You always should take a break, but for me, like even on my holiday, I decided I couldn't turn down the opportunity to investigate that. So I went to the street markets where they would sell these illicit materials. And I had my mom with me and my family, and I actually put my mom on task to sort of like, hey, take a picture of these like illicit materials, like, and so she was posing as a tourist. And so that was really interesting. Like we actually had a raid happen in the middle of our sort of exploration of this sort of underground piracy market. So the customs agents came in and actually shut down the vendors, and in uniform, in a very dramatic way, came in and closed them down, and of course taking pictures. And that was really exciting to me. So that was sort of, even though most of the reporting that I've done has been more in the entertainment and tech industry, that was a pretty serious story that got onto the first page. Yeah, so that was a big deal for me.
Interviewed a lot of artists over the years as well. When you walk into your office, there's a gold record from Radiohead hanging on the wall. Just kind of curious the story behind that gold record.
So that came completely out of the blue. Like, I had no idea it was coming. Actually, one day at work at Billboard, I just had this large package arrive, and that's what it was. It was a gold record for the Bends, which was their second album. And the story behind it, as I now know, was that essentially Radiohead, for people that know that band, had initially in their career what people perceived them to be a one-hit wonder, which now in retrospect doesn't seem, possible given their longevity. But they had this one-hit Creep out of the blue, and then what happened was their second album, when it came out, which is this album called The Bends, sort of fell flat. Like, initially in its release, nobody was paying attention to it. I think they'd written them off as sort of a one-hit wonder. And so, as a reporter at Billboard, I also had the ability to contribute to our review section. And so I actually reviewed the record for Billboard and gave it a rave review. And then when we did our year-end top 10 critics pick, I put it as my number one. And so because the album initially didn't sell very well, and I think they were kind of, feeling a little bit, bad about it, they really loved the fact that somebody stood up for them. And so I apparently got on their good list, and that and a few other things sort of just came my way after that. So I got to interview them a few times, but that gold record was really neat. I mean, it's the only gold record I ever got with my name on it, but it was a nice surprise. Yeah.
After some years working for Billboard and being in the entertainment sector, you transitioned over to doing communications work in the tech sector. How did that change come about?
Well, a lot of times what happens when you're a journalist is you'll get to know your subjects that you interview really, really well. And so because when the internet started taking off, I was reporting on that sector. And I met a lot of people really fast in the early pioneer days of the internet, like Mark Cuban, who I think a lot of people know now from, I just forgot the show, Shark Tank, right? And of course the Mavericks, was a person that I interviewed frequently. Rob Glazer is less known, but locally he's known as the founder of Real Networks. And a few other folks like that. You would interview them, you get to know them socially as well, always trying to maintain your line, as being a reporter. But with this particular opportunity, I was presented, because I'd reported so much on the early days of streaming media and Real Networks, then Progressive Networks, Rob Glazer basically said, I want you to work with us, because, he liked my reporting and so on. And I actually said no initially because I had never envisioned a career beyond journalism. I just wanted to be a journalist. And it was like my dream job at Billboard. I'm like, oh my God, this is awesome. I get to be an artist and write and do my byline out. So I said no, but then the internet started to take off. And anyone now, of course, in retrospect, we know that became revolutionary. And I kind of saw the writing on the wall that it was really a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that I should not miss. Just in my gut, I just knew, and it's proved to be true. So I gave up my dream job, and I actually finally, later on, was offered it again. The second time I said yes. And it was tough because I thought I would be at Billboard for decades. I just figured I'd arrived. And so that's what made me do the transition.
So I think students today might not understand the trepidation you might have felt because there's a lot of crossover between the journalism sector and the media communications sector today.
Yeah.
Back then, it was going to the dark side if you went to do comm work.
Yeah.
Did you wrestle with that? Is that part of the decision making?
Yeah, it is, because and especially in that time frame, you're right, the dark side. If you were a journalist and you crossed over to a public relations position or a corporate communications position, it was almost impossible to credibly jump back. So if you wanted to dip your toe in that area and then say, never mind, I'm going back, people really viewed that negatively. There's a stereotype against it. And so I guess the view was that it would taint your ability to be impartial and neutral in your reporting because you've already taken money from the other side. I find that to be less the case now, especially we talk about brand journalism. I know you talk about it in your class, the idea that there's a real need for the journalistic storytelling skills and to do that really well by corporations like Starbucks and Exxon and corporations you love and hate have brand journalists sometimes in-house that they'll employ. So that's something that's really a viable career path. Yeah.
Very good. So I think students have a good idea of what a journalist does or a reporter does because they see it on television and the movies. Media communications people, not so much. Can you kind of give a basic definition of what a media or a comm director or a comm person does?
So the jobs can vary dramatically based on the organization and the entity you're at. So you mean like at a corporation, that kind of thing? So again, it's going to vary place by place, but a lot of the storytelling, writing skills that you guys learn in community college or college are definitely applicable. So you have to be a strong writer in your day-to-day duties. You're writing corporate memos, internal communications, communications that might be external, like press releases or media alerts. You may be doing video and or audio editing and or coordinating. If you're not hands-on doing it yourself, then you're sort of managing or coordinating with other teams, internal or external, to do those things as well. So you have to really know how to tell a story, be efficient and persuasive and credible in doing that. There's a lot of consulting internally, so you might hopefully have a seat at the table with the executives to sort of let them know communication strategy to be credible, especially in this day of social media. It's another piece to it that's obviously important now, is communicating with the public and understanding that it's not just a one-way communication. Obviously, we're in an era where nobody wants to be barked at, right? So if you like on Facebook or whatever social media outlet you're on, when you opt into that relationship, there's an implicit understanding that they're going to listen back when you respond. And so having a strategy for that and understanding that you don't always control the message in the way maybe 20 years ago that you did. You have to listen. It's two-way. Yeah.
And you continue to remain active in the field, but you have also transitioned into teaching full-time, and I first taught at a community college and then moved on to be the director over here at WSU Everett. Just kind of curious why the shift from the tech sector and comm or to teaching full-time?
Yeah, I know you know the story, but so I'll share it again. It's a personal story that's a little maybe unexpected. So as I mentioned earlier, I was in my dream job. Like when I arrived at Billboard and then of course took the unexpected detour into the tech sector, you just never know where life's going to take you. Like you can be dead set, I'm going to do this, and then something happens and you take a different direction. So I was very lucky. I got my dream job of working at Billboard. Never anticipated the internet being what it was. That brought me into a whole different career path. So what happened was, in the first .com bubble, where I worked at Amazon at the time, on a personal note, back home in California where my family was from, I had my dad, who's getting older in age, was diagnosed with a form of cancer. And so it was very clear that that was going to be a bit of a challenge for our family. And so I, on a whim, and just frankly, I was just kind of burnt out because life had moved so fast right out of college for me, especially with the .com explosion. I just instinctively thought, well, my community college that I had gone to as a student had an opening for a broadcast and journalism instructor. And so I thought, well, I probably won't have a shot at it. I don't even know how I feel about it, but my dad is there. Wouldn't it be really cool if I got hired and I can leave the rat race for a while, only for a while, and sort of help in what might be his final years? So sure enough, that's what happened. I applied for this job, just frankly on a whim, thinking about personal family obligations, and just frankly just taking a downshift from the craziness of the world that I'd been in, the entertainment industry and tech industry. And I got the job, which was crazy. And then I had to say, okay, this is real. Do I really want to do this? And because of the family situation, it just felt like the right thing to do. So I did, and I went, and my dad indeed did pass away within the first year of being there. And then I stayed because I liked it. I was like, oh my God, this is cool. I love teaching, and I never expected to do this, but here I am. And so that's what sort of brought me into that world.
As you talk a little bit about that kind of, you never know where your career is going to take you, being adaptable. We've talked before, and my career followed that same trajectory from journalism to comm to education. I'm kind of curious from somebody whose path is very similar, journalism, communications, or teaching, what do you like best?
Oh my God, I don't even know how I would answer that. I mean, I like all of them. I can't imagine not teaching, honestly, just because this is where I am now and where I have sort of, staked my claim, and this is very cliched, and people will say, well, is this sincere or not? But the reality, and I'm sure you must feel this way, the reality is like when you have a student that goes through your classes and or the programs that you're with, and you see them go into the career. I mean, once you're in it a while, you see people go into their careers. Like we have one of our students right now who just got a huge promotion from the WSU Everett program. She's one of our first graduates, and she has a director level position 2 years out of the program, and that's huge. So and she's somebody who was sort of an underdog. She was somebody who had a non-traditional background in terms of she went away from school, life happened, and then she went back. When you have stories like that of somebody that you make a difference, it's just hard to compete with that. I love reporting, I love the tech sector, but you know what? That personal component, you just can't beat it. Yeah.
And so your program at WSU is an integrated strategic communications program. And I talk about it often, and I know what it is. And there are times where I look at my students and they're kind of blinking at me, and it's clear that that's not a common phrase. So can Can you define integrated strategic communications?
No. Yes, I can. Yes, I can. I'm not crazy about the name, ironically enough, but it is one that we have for a lot of reasons. So essentially, integrated strategic communication is kind of an umbrella term that encompasses a lot of things. And so, for example, if you want a career path in corporate communication, public relations, advertising, marketing, social media management, community management, those kinds of areas, that kind of career path, you're going to get the skill sets in our program that would address it. So integrated strategic communication is the idea of sort of the reality of the world that we're in right now, which is that those communication skills that you might learn, say in a journalism class and or other types of related comm classes, there's some overlap and blending and blurring that's happening now where jobs that are out there want a little bit of this and a little bit of that. You kind of need to know a lot of things. So integrated strategic communication is the ability to sort of integrate in all of these skill sets in the communication field together. And it's really important to think about, if you really break out the meaning of it, strategic, the idea that you're not just executing like a cog in the wheel, writing something because you're told to, like you're using your brain and critical thinking to strategically identify what's the right choice to do. And so that sort of higher level, that's what gets you from being sort of the low level to the higher level in the organization, is the ability to think fast on your feet and really anticipate public responses, the strategy part of it as well.
As when I was first introduced to your program, I saw the list of classes. If I was writing down all of the job skills that I needed when I was working as a communications director, that class list almost perfectly mirrored that list. And I did not know I was doing integrated strategic communications, but that certainly was what I was doing. WSU has been expanding its footprint here on the west side of the mountains, and it's kind of curious why they thought that the StratComm program was one they wanted to bring to Everett. Why is there a need for it here?
I think well, number one, and these things always have ebbs and flows, just to disclose this, but right now, today, the market in the greater Seattle area is quite hot and positive for opportunities. Like there's a lot of jobs in the comm sector because of just the explosion that's going on overall in the greater Seattle, including Snohomish County area. And so that is something, one of the things that WSU does before they enter into a new market is they'll do a sort of as any business would, they'll do sort of an analysis, like where are the strengths and weaknesses of entering this market, is there demand for it, et cetera, et cetera. And so I think they just looked and saw that there was a need for that skill set here, and that there would be enough demand for this kind of program. And indeed, that's been the case. Like we're now, started in this program came over to Everett in 2014, as you know, right? And so we're about 3 or 4 years in. We've had 2 rounds of graduating seniors into the workforce now, and we're now up to 70 active full-time students, many of which come from Everett Community College, which is awesome. And we're the second largest program in WSU Everett, behind mechanical engineering. Pretty much, not all, but most of the WSU Everett programs are in the STEM field, science, technology, math, I'm gonna forget what it is.
Math and engineering.
Yeah, math and engineering, I should know that, right, thank you. But it's a lot of the sciences, basically. And you know what, that's great, but guess what? Some of us are not wired, it's just not our thing, and I'm one of them. And no, that's not a diss on people that are mathematically minded, but the reality is that's not for everybody. And so it needs to be a place, and I'm constantly talking about this to our chancellor as well. It's like, when you talk about WSU Everett, mention the fact that Murrow and non-STEM related initiatives are here as well, and we're the second largest program. So we certainly hold our own.
Yeah. Final question for you. Both of us came into the field in the pre-digital age and dealt with the tumult of the internet. I think both of us survived and actually thrived because we were adaptable. Positioned where you are now, I'm sure you see some changes coming in the future as well. What current comm students, what kinds of things should they be looking out for in terms of technological changes or changes in the field, and how can they best prepare themselves to deal with them?
Expect change, number one. Just don't ever get complacent. Like you mentioned, I know for me, my career trajectory and path to where I am today, like if I had not been adaptable, just to kind of really date myself, right? Like when I was coming through college, I remember writing term papers on like old-fashioned like typewriters and early word processors that were not connected to the internet, and it was a whole different process. And I never would have envisioned the reality of the norm of what it is to be a journalist now. So just expect that there are going to be things that you cannot anticipate that are going to be the norm in your day-to-day duties. They may be software platforms, tools, technologies. I mean, I could predict and say things like VR and AR and all these other things that are out there right now that are starting to get some traction. Some may take off, some may be hot for the moment and then go away. Who knows? Facebook and Snapchat and whatever, those platforms are here now and popular, but from a social media perspective, hey, what's going to be here in 5 years? You cannot predict. Even if you think, oh, Facebook will never go anywhere. Well, not necessarily. You don't know. There could be things that happen that sort of knock that out as the choice of a platform for distribution. So you just never know. The best thing that I would say, though, is to expect the unexpected and to be flexible and open-minded and don't be stubborn and stuck in one way of doing things. Open your mind and be open, and don't be afraid to retrain, and I'm sure you have had to do again and again and again. Sometimes it gets annoying. You're like, I just want to have it be normal for a while. But then there's new stuff you have to learn, because otherwise, who wants to go to a classroom? And I know you don't do this and I don't do this, but you don't want to go to a classroom and learn something that was 20 years ago. You want to make sure that the skills that you learn are relevant today so that you graduate into the workforce and be a viable employee. So I think just be adaptable and understand things will change.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us, Mr. Atwood.